Ideas Original.
We want to welcome both of you to the No Ideas Original podcast. We're happy to have Mick Murphy and David Frank from The System in the house joining us for this interview today. We know we don't have but so much time, but we have a plethora of questions that we want to ask you guys. Big fans of your music. We thought we would start out though with just getting a little bit of history about the both of you. So if you could tell us a little bit about, you know, where you're originally from and how you found your way into music, I think that'd be the perfect way to sort of segue into more questions as it relates to The System.
All right.
Absolutely. Yeah. David Frank, Davey, you're on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I grew up in like a very unlikely place for the kind of music that we do, I suppose, Weston, Massachusetts. But I was classically trained, you know, and played in rock bands and all sorts of stuff, and went to New York. You know, I went to Berklee College of Music, which was,
nice.
you know, which was a great thing. But I mean, I was like taking piano lessons since I was 5 years old, and from jazz pianists when I was like 13, 14. And so I had like a lot of background in just music theory and things like that. And I moved to New York when I was like, you know, in my mid-20s, and ran into Mick Murphy. Hey Mick, go ahead. That's like a very short version. Okay, there were a million.
There's more to your story, David.
Oh man, you put me on the spot.
Yeah. There's more to your story. Tell them about the music building. So that's kind of
okay. So yes,
really
right. Well, yeah. When I did decide I was going to move to New York, you know, all my friends and everything in Boston were like, "You're crazy. Nothing's going to happen. You know, you'll be back here in no time." You know, so but I moved, and at first I was playing with Frank Sinatra imitators and all sorts of stuff. But my music was. But then I got involved like in a lot of bands that were playing at this place called the Music Building, which is actually where Madonna came from too. You know, and many other acts of that at that time. And I was in her band, and then you know, so I was playing in the music. Yeah, I was in the Music Building, and well, I just, you know, I was rehearsing with a lot of different bands, and once I was playing with this one band at a club. I think it was called Tracks. It was on the Upper East Side. I'm not sure if that was the name of it.
Yeah. It was called
and then Mike came in. Mike was with a friend of his, Dennis King, and they came in looking at the band I was playing in, because I was playing in all these different bands as a hired hand. You know, they paid me like $2.50 an hour or $20, whatever it was. and I was playing, you know, synthesizer, and Mike said to him, "Hey, you know, I'm not sure about the band, but that guy on keyboards, he's great, and you need a keyboard player in Clear." There was a band called Clear on Atlantic. That was doing really well at that time. They had that song, "Keep Your Body Working."
And
Dave, you've been moving around early, huh?
Yeah, he was moving around.
I'm still in motion here. I went skiing yesterday. Hey.
Yeah, you know, it's like a shark. You got to keep swimming, baby.
You got to keep swimming. So yeah, and so Mike said, "Hey, you know, this guy could be good for Clear." So before I knew it, actually, I tried out to be in Clear. They were going on the road, and I was in someone else's really smelly fencing outfit, the last keyboard player. You know, I was like on the road, and man, I smelled like that other guy for like, you know, for weeks. It smelled terrible. But anyway, and then I started, you know, Mike and I started working together. Go, Mike. Now you go.
Okay. So I hail from, actually I'm born in North Carolina, but I hail from Jamaica, Queens, which is a hotbed of musicians. I mean, generations. So we had early generations who were the process type dudes who would doo-wop, you know, but soul doo-wop, like the Temptations, those kind of cats. Then we had like bands like Willie Feaster and the Mighty Magnificent. We had Double O Soul. We had Creative Funk. These are like all these little pockets of great type band. We had a band called the Firebolts. We had just so many bands. Because people had garages and basements, so bands would rehearse in the basements. And the parents, you know, as a way for the parents to be involved to keep the kids up the street. Yeah, it was a thing. It really was a thing. So my mom was like the club president of everything. So a lot of social clubs were happening then. Like debutantes for 16-year-old girls coming out, and my mother kind of ran a lot of committees. So her best friend, Lorraine Fontaine, that was my mother's running buddy. Her son was in this band called the Soul Shakers, and I was like 14, but I'd been singing in school every time there was like a school performance. I always sang stuff, The Sound of Music, that kind of stuff. So I was always singing. I sang in church. My family sings. My aunts, my cousin Bernard was a singer, is a singer. So I was playing this band, the Soul Shakers. First, they wouldn't let me in because I was like 13, 14, and they were like 16. But my mother kept pushing them. You got to hear Michael sing. You got to hear him sing. You got to hear him sing. So one night they let me sing one song, and it was like, I think the song was called "The Horse." Hit you to the horse.
The white horse, right?
No, the all right.
Ride the white horse.
Out of sight. We're talking like 1920. 69, like that. So it was right in that transition where there were real funk bands with funky drummers, and some of them had horns. And I got in a band, and we were gigging almost every weekend, playing covers of. I was like a little Michael Jackson. I could do any James Brown song, Aretha Franklin song. I had a really high voice, so we were gigging all the time, really. And then it kind of dawned on me that
you guys were y'all were immersed into music very early, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So from there, I started kind of being the band leader. I was like, hey, we're going to rehearse 3 times a week because we're going to be like the Jacksons because they rehearse all the time. And I was like a little Hitler, really. I was a bad guy. I was a little bossy guy, right? So eventually I worked my way up through bands. And the gentleman that David was talking about, Dennis King, was the chief mastering engineer at Atlantic. And he lived not too far from me. So he took one of my bands under his wing. I had a band called Jack Sass, and that had Lala. She wrote "You Give Good Love."
Oh wow!
So she was really an inspiration for me to learn about songwriting because she was a natural songwriter from a very early age. So we stuck with that band for a while. We recorded a couple records, and we were kind of little hot shit out in Queens. We would play clubs. We played clubs in Manhattan, and we would go on the road like to Newport, where you play a club for a week and stay there for a week, and we would go to, we're all over.
Right.
At one point, we played at this club called The Cellar, which David actually lived right across the street from there.
At one point, yeah, I did.
I don't know if I met you. I hadn't met you yet, but Kinky Fox used to play there, Johnny Kemp's band. So we would alternate weekends. So one week, this guy comes in, Fred Petrus, who was from Italy, and he would make all these records in Europe, and then they wouldn't be real bands. He'd get different singers, and he ended up having created the group Change with Luther Vandross.
Okay.
Yeah. And Brooklyn Queens Express Band. He had a lot of bands. So he kind of took me on his wing. He said, hey, I want your band to go on the road and be Peter Jacques' band. I was like, no, you're not paying enough of us to go on the road, but I'd love to learn about publishing and music. He said, well, why don't you come work for me? So I worked in his office, helping to run his office for a good 2 years. And it was during that time that I kind of cut my teeth in the studio because he had incredible productions. Mauro Malavasi was his main engineer. And producer, if you know the Change record, you hear that sound, it's like a really tight sound. And it was during that time that I first met David. I think I met you before the Dennis King episode. Is that right?
That's right. Well, there was that one time when Kashif, I had not to take away, but I just
wow.
I had one number. I had one phone number when I came to New York, and then when I got there, someone else gave me another phone number that was important to me. One of them was this well, that's not worth mentioning, but the one.
Edit.
No, I didn't say it was Eric. What was that guy's name? Eric, the guy who.
The engineer, right?
The Bob Marley album. He ended up producer. In any case, Eric Thorngren, E.T.
Yep.
But in any case, someone gave me Kashif's number, and I called and I left a message on his answering machine and just said, I'm from Boston, and I'd love to substitute for you if you ever need a sub, like on a recording session, because he was doing a lot of recording sessions. Yeah. And I didn't know him, and he had never heard me play, so it was just out of the, just like aggressively going for it.
Dark, right?
He called me back.
Oh wow!
He called me back out of the blue, like he didn't know how I played, and I talked to him for a little while, and a couple weeks later, he called me and he said, "I need a sub for a session tomorrow morning. Can you do it?" And I went to Media Sound, and Mike was there with Fred Petrus, and it was a band called the Ritchie Family. It was a big hit.
I'll do my best for you, baby. Yep. So at this point, I had gotten in with Fred, and he really had his hands in a lot of productions, and I introduced him to all the younger cats who could play. I don't know, Timmy Allen is a bass player. You may not know these names, but these are all like the kind of young hot shit cats, guitar players, keyboard players, all kind of around that cellar. Everybody kind of came through there playing. Most of us were from Queens, a few from the Bronx. So I turned them all to all these cats because I knew them all, because they knew my band. They used to come see Jack Sass. And so one day, David comes to did you call me or come to the office? I think he called me and said,
"Oh, I called you and I offered you." I said, I'll give you 15% of whatever I make if you get me set.
Yeah. And I said, no, we just do it. If you do the sessions and you can play, we are good. We'll build it up from there. Yeah. So an opportunity came up while I was working with Fred. We used to do all the demos of the young cats at this little studio on 7th Avenue. It was an 8-track studio, but the demo sounded fine. And then Fred would decide, we're going to cut this song, we're going to cut that song. I left off the Change project. I worked with him the whole time of Change with Luther Vandross. Because I sang background on a few songs. So I was really learning the studio, because before that it was all like 4-track, 8-track little recordings with my band. So I'm learning how to really put records together and how to put people on records and stuff. So David calls me. No, I called David because this studio we used for demos. I said, "Dave, come on, we can go do a demo."
I had a drum machine.
He had a DMX.
I had a drum machine.
A DMX drum machine.
He was using me.
No. I was working with you, man. I was trying to build you up, man. I was trying to get you in.
Whatever.
So let me ask you guys this: between the building and the cellar, how much talent did y'all come across that later on became what they became? Because it seems like y'all was in a plethora or garden of this music genius in the early stages, though.
Yeah. Everybody. Melissa Morgan. These are all like young singers from Queens. Timmy Allen, Jeff Bova, Yogi Horton. Man.
Well, Mtume was even.
It's funny you say Mtume, because we had Tawatha Agee on, and we was talking to her, and I was like, damn, it just sound like the Renaissance period. Just listening to y'all talk about all the talent that was around.
That's my girl, man. We love Tawatha.
Yeah. We both played on.
I know.
Yeah. Say again, Dave.
We both played on Juicy Fruit, which of course became Juicy also.
Yeah. And Biggie, one of Biggie's biggest hits too.
Yeah. And it's the same track, so it was good.
So we're growing, we're percolating, we're on the road with Clear. I'm a road manager, basically a glorified roadie, but I knew my road stuff. So a road manager, when it gets tight, it starts raining, you help move the gear. So one day David called me and said, because he had heard me kind of singing while I was working. He didn't know I was a singer. He didn't know my history.
Right, but I heard him singing when I went and did that session using my drum machine. I heard him singing. Yeah.
And so he said, "Hey, I have some. Come by my studio. I'm gonna leave it up to
tell the story."
Yeah, I love the story. Go ahead.
I had some studio time that I was bartering with a studio owner, and at that time you didn't have studios. You didn't have home studios, of course. So I was bartering some studio time with this guy, and Madonna was singing on a track that I had written a track like with just sequencer and drum machine, which was really doing at that time at all. I think I might have been the first person to have a DSX, which was the sequencer part of the Oberheim system.
And when was this? Like 80 what?
That was 82. That was in May 82. May,
so
beginning of May.
Drum machine. You was using a drum machine in 82.
82 and a sequencer hooked up together to make a track.
Wow.
Madonna called me. She said, I don't want to do this with you because my friend wants to do it. And I was like, I'm not doing it because he's going to do live instruments and I want it to be all electronic. And then I'm sitting there I had time the next day. And I went, that guy, Mike Murphy, he's great. I love his voice. I'm going to call him at his office. And I called Mike at his office where he was working. I said, come over and rewrite this song. I have studio time tomorrow if you could take the day off. And he did that. He came over. We totally wrote a different top line and everything to the track. And he just like wrote, and
let me tell you my story regarding that. So I'm in this band, Jack Sass. It's like a 5-piece funk rock band, like rocking, but we couldn't get a record deal. But we were hot shit. We were really good. No, we really were. We were. I'm not fronting.
I like your Mike. I love your honesty, bro. I love it.
So I'm like, okay. So I'm working for Petrus now, and so Dave invites me to listen to his music. Now I'd known him with Clear, but a lot of their music was, even though it was funky, it was like a lot of kind of jazz inflections. Like a little, so I didn't know what to expect of David's own music. So in my mind, I'd always wanted to be like part of a Brit electro group. That was my thing in my head, because I had done all the soul stuff coming up, through all genres. And I was like, man, if you could imagine like Kraftwerk and Rick James, that was in my head, that combination. So I show up at Dave's studio, and he has the sequencer and the OB8. And he said, well, this is the song. He hits the button, and my heart almost jumped out of my chest, because it was exactly what I had envisioned the sound would be. It was exactly and I was like, wow. So I had the idea of what it would be like, but I had never written a song in that mode. So he said to me, hey, just you sound great. Just write a lyric, go home and write a lyric, and we'll meet tomorrow morning. I'm like, write a lyric, write a song tonight, arrange it. But somehow I went home, I did it, really wrote most of the song. And if you know the song In Times of Passion, there are several sections. Each section could be a song. But somehow the fusion of all those parts, it was very much in the reign of a very funky Eurythmics. That's how I can.
It's the song after You're in My System on our first album.
Okay.
You're in My System, and it's Passion.
It's Passion. I mean, Dave, you just casually brushed past. He was like, it was Madonna, and I just think 1982 is Madonna. But back then, did you know Madonna would be Madonna?
Nope, she was sleeping in the hallway on a cot or on the floor.
Wow. So I did, because my band Jack Sass and Madonna, and we may have crossed paths at some time, David. Queens College had a Rathskeller. So every Wednesday.
And I played with her, by the way. So I'm not saying that I didn't know that she was going to be famous. But anyway.
So she played on Wednesday and we played on Thursday. And I had gone to see her on one of the Wednesdays, and I like, she could be something, I was like already in her
you had that feeling that she was going to be like Madonna.
And she was very bossy, and like she treated her manager like crap. She's like, this is my studio. I run this. This is mine.
I witnessed a lot of that.
So anyway, so we go to the studio. He picked me up like on whatever morning that was, the Friday or whatever. We go to the studio like 6 a.m. We work the whole day into the evening. We lay down the track. We do the entire vocal. We mix it. We're done at like 3 or 4 in the morning. One day. So he drops me back at my mother's house, where I was living at the time, in the basement. You know those days. You know what it is, right? And I had an incredible sound system, because I had the band's PA. I owned the PA, right? So I put this record on, and I let it blast, and I was like, this is
we
it.
got one.
This is the one. And I knew I because I was on the road with Clear, I had made a lot of relationships with Atlantic Records. So there was one particular guy, Jimmy Delahan, who worked for Atlantic, who was the right-hand man of Jerry Greenberg, who was the president of Atlantic. He didn't know me from Adam, but Jim was always around, the studio, because I hung out at Atlantic Studios a lot with Dennis King. So I go in with the record, and he said, "Oh man, come on." He had invited me. He said, "If you ever have anything you want me to hear, feel free to come in and play it." So I'm there like 9 in the morning. It's not a game. I got up. I went to Atlantic Recording Studios and got
You didn't sleep that night.
Dennis King to press 3 acetates. The vinyl.
Wow.
Test
Yeah.
So I had those 3 acetates, and I took one of them to Atlantic Records, and Jim Delahan played about 30 seconds of it. He said, "Hold on a minute." He goes through a door and comes back out with Jerry Greenberg, who at that time, he was the youngest president of any label. He had signed Led Zeppelin. He was the man. The man.
Yeah. So this is y'all original song y'all did together?
Yep. That's
it's
passion. You
should listen to it. You should listen to it. It's like it's a heavy. It's a heavy. So he comes out, he looks at me, kind of smiles, sits in his chair, turns his back to me because the speakers are facing out in our direction. Jimmy puts the record on. It plays like a minute, and he turns around and he said, "You got yourself a record deal." Just like that.
Wow.
Just like
Same morning, one day, all in one day. Wow. So I go down to the corner, payphone. Payphone on the corner.
How much was it? A quarter or a dime?
Hey, it could have been $100. I was making that call. It was probably a quarter. I don't know. So I called David. I said, and he was like, "Well, I think we can make the chorus better." I'm not. I said, "David, we have a record deal." So you can tell up in there, Dave, how quickly everything.
So we were still, Mike was still the road manager for Clear, and I was still in the fencing outfit. And we were doing within like about 3 weeks from then, it was on the radio already, and we were in Washington D.C. in the mud on a rainy day in a school bus, like they had rented to get us down there. And it comes on the radio in Washington D.C., which is a big deal then, right?
Yeah.
And it comes on, and I'm like, I'm looking out the window for Mike. "Hey, Mike, our song's on the radio." And I see him, and he's got like an Ampeg SVT cabinet, and I'm like, "Our song's on the radio." And I swear, I thought he was gonna just throw the thing,
drop it, right?
But he didn't.
But Clear, they kind of downplayed a little bit of my musicality because they didn't know me like that. But when that song came out, there was a real sense of jealousy from the leader. You know what I'm saying? Like a real sense. And then from that point on, every time we would make a song, I'd like, "Hey, listen to this. What do you think?" I remember playing him after we had a really big hit with the first album, Sweat. "You're in My System" was our second single, which went top 10 everywhere. For a long time, it was top 10. But man, it happened really quickly for us.
Really quickly. All right.
Don't tell me that in My System that they downplayed that too as a great record.
No, they didn't. At that point, we were killing it. Yeah.
By then, we already had our momentum. They couldn't.
I was to say, wow.
The original song, is this a song that you was holding on, Dave? You was working on with the DMX?
With Madonna.
Yeah. Right? Our first song was "It's Passion," the one that we just told the whole story about doing. Is "It's Passion," and that was on the radio. That's the one that was on the radio first, and it was, a really big dance hit, but also it was a big hit on R&B radio in LA and New York.
Frankie Crocker adopted that song. That's the man. If it wasn't for him, so much music would never have been heard. He didn't have any boundaries as to what he was going to play. If it was like R&B, electronic, whatever it was, if he dug it, he was going to get in it.
Do you guys think?
Go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say, do you guys think you were ahead of your time in terms of your sound in the States?
Well, I guess we were probably ahead of our time everywhere in the whole universe. I'm just kidding.
No, I think,
because we don't know. We might be really behind. There might be some really advanced music out there somewhere on some planet. But for that time, we probably were. We're just doing
it was an interesting juxtaposition because hip hop was a bit in its infancy. So David living in New York, it was a funny crossover of musical ideas because David was listening to his favorite stuff was like Africa Bambaataa, the drum beats on that stuff. And there were many records that were out at that time that were basically hip hop records and hip hop beats that if you listen to our early records, there's a bit of an emulation and a fusion of that with the heavy electronics and the chord changes and all
Beat
that.
Street.
Beat Street. Yeah.
Baptize the Beat.
Yeah. That's right.
And Baptize the Beat was like actually different than a lot of the other songs on the album. I mean, in my opinion,
Yeah, it definitely was. How'd you find your way into Beat Street though? How'd that opportunity?
Beat Street. Okay, well, Arthur Baker asked us to write a song for it, and that's what we did, and then we did that. We also wrote another song for it called "This Is My Night," which was Chaka Khan's first song on her "I Feel for You" album.
Yeah,
I know that. And her second single on the album actually was going to be her first single, but then "I Feel for You" was like a no-brainer.
I feel for you, like that's amazing. So hold on, this could be the night.
There was another song that
Cindy Mizell.
But what happened was Chaka didn't want to be in the movie. And then she came to us afterward and said, "Hey, I want that song for my title cut of my album." And we were like, "Yeah, okay."
You mentioned Cindy Mizell. Cindy Mizell was one of our very early kind of discovered. I met her actually early on. I worked for Sugar Hill. I was like road manager. I was a road manager on the tour with the Sugar Hill Gang and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and the Sequence. And we toured on yellow cheese school buses all through the South. I'm not lying.
Oh my goodness.
It was crazy. And the tour started out, the Sugar Hill Gang was on top. But somehow in the middle of the tour, Melly Mel hit him with a couple of them joints, and all of a sudden, Grandmaster Flash was running the show.
It's funny. We talked about hip hop, and what I've heard from Dave was that he used the drum machine. The drum machine today is the stove in the kitchen for hip hop. Like that is the tool that you were using back then to create all that music. Right. I wonder now, sonically, from the 80s, how much do you think music has changed sonically from back then? Or has it changed even more or at all?
Well, I mean, I think that it's changed. I think that the thing you have to realize about the drum machines at that time, there was a Linn drum, and then there was the DMX, the overhung DMX. That's the one I got.
The SV emulator, Dave.
Well, there are those. There are the other ones also that were there, and the 808 like kind of developed within a few years. All those things. Yeah. But right at that moment in 1982, the only ones that I knew about were the Linn drum and the DMX. So each of those drum machines really only had one kick sound, or maybe two. One kick drum sound. There was one snare. So our whole first song. One snare, one hi-hat with an open hi-hat, two tom-toms that were pitched so you could go bup, 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 bup.
Gosh.
Now, we did our first album, and then there was a percussion and a tambourine, okay? And that's all there was. And then everything else was, and then there was a bass, like the Minimoog bass.
Yeah.
And the Oberheim was split up into 4 notes for 2 parts. And our first album was done basically with just that limit: bass line, 2 rhythm parts, and the 6 or 7, I think 8 different drum sounds. Wow. That's all there was. So you had to, but still, you could imagine, like at the time,
yes,
I could kind of imagine that there was going to be a future sound, and I was really intent on they didn't have tutorial videos. So you had to read the manual and learn how to use every single detail. And that's what I decided I was going to do at that time. I was going to actually learn how to use every single detail, and the whole quantization thing was new. There was no such thing. So it was like I knew all about music. So anyway, so at the time, you know, it was like there were limited tools, and it expanded exponentially over the next couple of years. Where
like none other, man, between quantizing the hearing,
everything, and expanded, and all the instruments and the drum machines and different synthesizers and everything. You know?
Yeah, they actually they have digital workstations that actually emulate your sound, the lens sounds now to get that same feel from back then.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys have worked with and encountered all types of people. What part of the music do you enjoy the most?
I mean, I don't know about you. I enjoy like writing something new every.
You was just in the writing camp. I can imagine.
I just enjoy like writing something new. You know, just like coming in and going, you know, guide me. You know, I don't know. I just like put my hands on it, and that's kind of how everything. That's how I do everything. You know, I just do that, and then I send it to Mike.
Yeah, and I really enjoy.
I send him too much.
Process. Yep, you send me too much. I enjoy fusing together what we do.
Right.
And really enjoy making sure that it's different than anything else that's out there.
Okay.
I mean, I listen to so much music, and there's so many great songs and ideas and producers and sounds at any given time. Even now, people say, it's not real music like it was in the 70s, not real, but it is. There's some great songs that are out now.
I agree.
But I agree. I feel like when David and I create together, we always come up with something that's new and really different, and that's my favorite part of the process.
Right.
Yeah. You know, David, you were talking about earlier, you were saying that, you know, that you were classically trained, and you mentioned theory, and sometimes I wonder, isn't it important for a musician or a producer or a songwriter to actually understand theory and be classically trained?
I don't know if they have to be classic. They don't have to be able to play classical music necessarily, or jazz, or really anything. But I think that it's kind of like the more you know about music, and the more you know about all the possibilities of it, the more the world opens up as to what could be, what new styles will develop over the years. And the more that, and when there are people that actually know a lot about music, and even people that can play well or can sing well and sing different styles of music, they will actually a lot of times implement the changes that happen in the future of music, whatever that is, which is always a possibility. At any moment, someone can come up with something amazing, and it can totally change the direction and make sure.
The reason why I asked that is because I feel like that the part around theory is very significant, but to me, music is so much about feel also. So I'm sure you've certainly been in the studio at some point, and you know something may not have made sense from a theoretical standpoint, but it was the feel or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so
there's no doubt about it. I don't just like go like, oh well, it has to be correct. Although there have been times where I probably was like being dogmatic about things occasionally in my mind. But I pretty much like,
I've had to change his mind a few times. I've had to change his mind.
Like, it's fine.
Give us an example.
You're right about feel. Feel's the most important thing. But on the other hand, if you actually know, how to manipulate sound and chord like that, it can make for whole new worlds to happen.
Great point. So, Mike, give us an example of a time that maybe feel won out over theory, and you was like, wait, maybe we should go with the feel on this instead of theory.
I gotta tell you, in our relationship, it kind of almost always happens.
Yeah,
it really does. It really does, because
that's the beauty of it.
One thing I can say about theory, when you know theory, you know chord changes and modulations that will work, but they won't work against a melody. people like to hear a melody that flows in a certain way. Yeah. They don't like to hear modulations. Yeah, for certain, we know the Earth, Wind, and Fire. They'll modulate very subtly, but they like things to have a melody that they can follow. Yeah. And sometimes Dave will send me something. I'm like, we don't need this part. We're just this is not the verse. This is the chorus, and this is the verse. And I'll chop it up, and I'll show them my idea of how it works. Because I'm basically a soul singer. I'm a soul singer. Like I came up singing soul, so the blues is in there. Those blue notes.
Hence the term "Don't disturb this groove," right?
That's right. That's right.
And it's the feeling that you have like between the notes really that wins out and that makes songs last forever. And the feelings you get from the lyrics combined, with the notes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who knows where music comes from? We don't really know exactly.
Right. I got a question for Mike. Wait, Mike, do you think R&B will ever make a resurgence?
It's already resurging. Listen to Usher, Still Good. Yeah, that's to me, songs like that. Like I try sometimes to get out of the writing songs in the love mode.
Yeah.
But a lot of my life and emotion evolves around feelings that I had when I was younger. I wanted a certain girl, and I wanted to be in a relationship, or I didn't want to. So I always end up falling back on that. But every now and then, a song like Usher's song, is it called "Still Good"?
We're still good. I thought he could have got a better female singer than Summer Walker for, but it is
Walker. She sounds great. Everything, listen to me. So many singers sound exactly the same right now in this moment that I can't really tell. And I'm like kind of the females are all kind of doing the same thing, which is cool. But I like to hear someone who just has their own vibe. As soon as you hear their voice, you know it's them.
I believe she sang in Billy Messinetti's wedding band. By the way, and that goes to show that people that can work in different situations and are often people who contribute. Like sometimes you kind of don't want to think that's a possibility, that they're just like original, but when you work, you can work in lots of different situations. And if she's a great singer in that situation, she's a great singer in this too.
So I'm wondering what you guys' thoughts are about a song like SZA, Kill Bill record with like the pitch of it and everything. What do you think about that?
SZA's my number one, man. SZA's lyrics are incredibly different, even though she's in the same female vocal genre, but she repeats a lot of phrases and her timing cuts in different ways. To me, she's the best right now. That's my
Kill Bill is that song.
I think she's the best right now.
The 80s was a transitional period between pop, rock, hip hop, new wave, heavy metal. It was just a plethora of sounds.
That's right.
I mean, you talked about synthesizing, and all these sounds are in your drum machines already. I think, and Yada might attest to this, there's a machine called a Triton. They got like 40,000 sounds and clicks and bits. I mean, that time of music was so original and so raw and rare and, kind of risk taking. I think we're there now, but I like to hear what you guys think of music now, today, outside of the R&B we just spoke. Like there's a plethora, a lot of things going
on. I mean, I still, I just turn on, I'm a lot of times I'll listen to like Sirius XM because I'm out in LA, like I'm in the car a lot. I'm not sure where all you guys are, but, so I'm in the car and they have like a hit station, Pandora station, TikTok station. Those are names, Pandora, TikTok. Who cares about them? It's the music that's on there that's important to me, anyway. And anyway, but I'm just saying, there's lots of different, and then there's lots of different stations. Obviously, there's if you want to listen to something, from there's the 1940s station. It has like a lot of times like really innovative things that you never even knew about. But there's a lot of great music now, and it's kind of all over the place. And I'll hear things that have not just almost like different. Mike was talking about its passion having different sections that are almost like different songs. I heard a song the other day. I can't remember what it was. I took a picture of it on my phone, but I can't remember what it was. It was like completely different. Like each part, it wasn't just that the chords or the vibe was. It was like the vibe was seriously like an R&B song, and then a rock song. It was just completely.
I'm seeing a lot of that with Travis Scott
over the place.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool because eventually, even though that might not work every time, and there might be things that you hear that you won't hear in 40 years, someone will do something with that stuff, and it will be heard for decades.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. There's some risk taking that I hear that I did hear in the 80s, which was a lot of risk taking coming from your Motown and your soul and your that energy. It was something that's like, oh shit, did you hear that? That sounds good. You know what I mean? So that's okay.
With the emergence of all the different types of music and different things we hear today, and like you're saying, the transitions and stuff, I mean, you guys, I gotta say, recording was probably a much different art than it is now or something. Is there any piece of gear or equipment that you wish that you had back in the days that we have now?
You think?
Mostly programs. Like Logic, for example, that you can use to build songs. And one way that we use it that we couldn't back then is Dave can work on a song in Logic, send me the programs. I can build a song on that, send it back to him, and we could basically change any part of it and try any type of different thing, rearranging. A perfect example is Don't Disturb This Groove. I mean, a lot of the stuff when we wrote demos, David would send me a track and I would start it at home, but then eventually we get in the same room. Don't Disturb This Groove. We had the verse, we had the chorus, but that little 2-bar section that leads to the chorus, the hang a sign section, we got that when we were face to face. We got that when we were face to face.
We wrote that together.
So there's a lot of advantages in the ability to just swap back and forth and work on songs and that didn't exist at that time.
Right. There's lots of advantages, and then there's also was a lot of possibilities then. Like just talking about Hang a Sign Upon the Door, that section of that song was when we worked on it. I remember we were trying to decide what melody to use. And we just decided, and I said, Mike, just turn off that melody and sing another one instead.
Another hook, like another hook.
And then he did. And then I said, now turn on the other one, even though we didn't even think about it. And that's what we ended up with, is just two melodies, which you have a tendency to do more now than you would then, because you always have the tracks. You could turn on every track and all that stuff in your sequence in Logic or Ableton or something. But back then it was less likely, but you still could do those things. So it's really about imagination and staying off your phone and not like just doing social media and actually writing music.
From Sweat,
like not watching shows like this, but just writing a song.
From Sweat to Don't Disturb This Groove was what? That was maybe like a four-year period. But in listening to that body of work in 4 years, you hear the evolution of you guys' sound. What was happening during that time that you evolved as a musician and as a group in 4 years? Because there's a distinct difference. Like, you still hear the same influence, but something changes. And I was trying to think of, when I was researching, I was like, what's the word to actually describe the change? And I couldn't come up with the word, but there's a noticeable change from Sweat to Don't Disturb This Groove.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great question.
Mike, you want to?
You're on. No, you're on, Dave.
I mean, like Sweat. Like one of the things. There were differences in terms of, first of all, in terms of the technology that was. First of all, when we did Sweat, we were both just going like, "Uh-oh, we're songwriters now, and we have to make an album." They're actually letting us make an album, which was not, like Mike said. I was a sideman in Clear and a whole bunch of other bands where people would say, play something like this, and I go, okay, but we had so we started this thing basically using everything that we possibly could harness in ourselves that we knew about music, whether it's Mike's perspective or mine, and combine them, right? And so, and also for that album, there was only that limited amount of instrumentation.
Okay.
Immediately on the second album, all of a sudden we had like 2 different keyboards and things that you could afford to buy and things like that. So, and as time went on, it got to be even more than that. Like we had like a whole studio full of keyboards.
And the world is opening up to you.
And everybody was calling and wanted us to use them. So there was that part. Then there was also the fear of not ever having another hit. So listening to the radio and going, yeah, we have to do something a little bit more like that person. Or it's like this. New Jack Swing. Okay, we gotta like try to do that. Okay, well, so we'll do Wicked or whatever, or Ellie and Babyface or whatever. You know, like digging my way. There was that part, and then also it wasn't just fear. It was just like fascination with the way other people's sounds and other people's music, and trying to integrate that into your own way of thinking. And anyway, that was my perspective of Mike.
Yeah. We had very similar perspectives on that creation. We did our second record, to me, Experiment, was our greatest combination of the best we could be during that time. Even a lot of the stuff on Experiment found its way to Don't Disturb This Groove. We had two great ballads on there. Well, beat ballads, Lollipops and Everything. Right? You know that song?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I've been listening to you guys' catalog.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had what was the second song on there? The second ballady thing, Dave.
I Can't Take Losing You.
Well, that was there was another one.
Promises Can Break.
Promises Can Break is my favorite song because it was about a real episode in my life, and I felt like the music and the lyric and the melody went completely hand in hand. And we also had like songs like Experiment, Get Jumpin'. I mean, really crazy combination.
Crazy combinations.
Yep.
And kind of rock and even David Bowie influence and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then, then on our third album, by the way, and this is another thing that happened as you go along, and it happens to lots of people, I'm sure, today, same kind of dynamic. We started working at Unique Studios with Chris Lord-Alge. And I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's like a mixer. And and he had done Shannon. He didn't do Shannon. Someone else wrote it.
Yep.
Right. Let the music play. So but he had a lot to do with that sound, or he knew how to do that sound, so that when we did the Pleasure Seekers album, which had This Is For You.
And
I love that record.
It Takes Two.
This Is For You. I love that record.
It Takes Two. Yeah. And so when we did that, we had kind of like a different sound like integrated into, and that was more of a sonic element, but it definitely contributed to the funk too.
I'll tell you something else, that now that we have so much ability to actually do stuff on our own, I think when we had those engineers recording, and it was their job to make everything sound better, right? Yeah. And they did. We worked with Michael Brower, who's one of the most incredible engineers, Chris Lord-Alge, Tom Lord-Alge, Jimmy Douglas. While we were creating, they added their own.
Craig Bishop also was the first album. He did a great job.
As we were recording the songs, they were building the record as we went along. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So they were making the drums sound right. So every overdub you did, you had that inflection and the feeling, and it was sounding better and better and better. Now we record and it sounds great to us, but we know we need an engineer to mix it, because we're not really engineers. We're really like songwriter producers
and musicians.
And that's one element I kind of miss, like the unique recording days when we go in the studio. We knew we had the songs, and we were just building the album in the studio.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that though, because as David was talking, and he was saying, like, like as you progress and you get more success, you have access to different equipment and things like that. And I think for some people, it helps them develop and become better artists, because they take that and they grow with it. But for some artists, it makes them become lazy artists and then there's an over reliance on what the technology and the equipment could do. But it doesn't seem like that for you guys. It seems like you evolved as artists. And for me, like the music that you guys make has always been like vibe music. Like it gives a vibe. Like, you know, you could put on Don't Disturb This Groove and it's a vibe. You ride to it. This is for you. Or, you know, in my system, like those are vibe records that just resonate with you. And I think you're fortunate enough to have in your catalog records that have created moments that's timeless records that's going to be around forever that people are going to appreciate, because there are a lot of people that they have a record that pops for a little bit, plays on the radio, but then that record doesn't stand the test of time. And you guys you're fortunate enough to have records that have stood the test of time. And it's just, I think, a testament of the great musicians that you are. And I want to give you credit and recognition for that.
Thank you.
David, Genie in a Bottle, Christina Aguilera. I didn't know. Is there anything else you want to tell? Did you secretly write something else because I didn't know about that. What other songs have you written and produced at that magnitude?
Hey, David's a modest guy. He's like, under this cap, there's a lot. But
this is about the system.
This guy's like, Madonna was on the cot. Christina Aguilera.
There's a lot, you know, there's been a lot of songs we've both written with different people, and it's a fantastic thing. But my life's work is really, in fact, the system. It kind of it just is. I mean, you know, it's like wonderful. What can you say about something like that? It's wonderful to have songs that are successful like that, and I enjoy writing other things, but the system, and you know, you should check out the album ESP, which was Electro Soul Pioneers. I don't know if you listened to that one, but it's like it was our later, and that actually was another one that I was saying before, that there was a progression where you listen, and that was one that we made in the 90s. We wrote most of the stuff in the 90s, so that it had sort of like, it incorporated a little bit of our take on a neo soul-ish type of thing on some of the songs. And there's songs like Good as Gold. If you haven't heard Good as Gold, and what are other ones? Below, so many songs on there. And then there's other ones like Let It Flow. There's another album called Unreleased Unleashed, which has a lot of our songs from different eras that were never released. That's why we called it that. And my assistant Matt DeFonso, credit for thinking of that title. He's Released Unleashed. Anyway, there's a lot of music.
Classic.
It was
definitely a classic.
Yeah. Were both of you in on the studio sessions for Entombed's Juicy Fruit and for Shaka Feel For You?
Oh yes.
David was on Feel For You. I wasn't on that.
You weren't on that.
Entombed we were on together.
Yep, we were on it together. And also, this is my night. This is my night. Mike sang on that. Yeah.
I sang with Shaka on background and everything.
This is my night.
Great story. Entombed, he was one of our great.
I love that brother.
He was one of our great supporters. So we're talking. Look, we made what we felt was like an incredible record with It's Passion, but it was so different. It was just really a different record, even though when you look back at it, it was incredible, like nothing else was out there. And you know, we're trying to make hits, you know, we're a little left to center all the time. We're a little bit over here. We're never like straight in what the vibe is. But
that's the brilliance of it.
Yeah, the way we got on Juicy, and Chume said he was driving through right before he got into the tunnel, the Holland Tunnel. It came on the radio.
That's
he said
right.
he had to pull over on the side. You know you meant no Holland.
You had an antenna.
You can't pull over the Holland Tunnel. My car is called in the Holland Tunnel.
Before the Holland Tunnel, you could pull over. He said I had to pull over when I heard that record. And that's how we got recruited to be on
right. And that was before You're In My System. Now there's another little story about that I remember, where Mtume thought that when he heard You're In My System, he said, you got to add some stuff to the verses. It's too empty, right?
Yeah.
Rest in peace. But and we didn't. And I remember we just went, no, we're not going to.
Well, here's another great one with when we were doing Don't Disturb This Groove. We were in Studio 2 or B, whatever they call it, and Arif was working in Studio A. Arif Martin. So we're working with Jimmy Douglas in this really small studio. Actually, it was very cozy, and we were coming up with great ideas. So Arif happened to walk by, or he had probably been listening more than we thought he was, and he said to us, "You got to edit girl. You got to edit girl." So he caused us to write that whole middle section,
Middle part of
the female answers. He's the reason why that's there.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That's a jewel.
Look him up. That guy wrote. He produced Aretha Franklin, a lot of her hits.
Wow.
And Cut the Cake, Average White
AWB.
He is like, and Hall and Oates, Abandoned Luncheonette.
Wow.
Hall and Oates.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, all right, but that's enough of that.
So we're talking a little bit about this, Mike, before you came on, the whole thing around, I guess, like the UK embracing sort of like the electro synth sound. And I wonder, like, why do you guys believe that the UK or Europe and just Europe in general, they've embraced it more than it's been embraced in the States?
Because they were hearing it first. It was already out over there. They already knew about it. They were already part of it. The Eurythmics, Kraftwerk. I can name a dozen bands that were already being influenced. Is that me popping?
There's there may be a little bit of another take on that also, that I think that in Europe they have a tendency to be more, the muso. They're more muso oriented because of classical music and their whole background of history of music. Yeah. And so they kind of embrace things that have a lot of detail and
that's another thing.
Maybe they consume music differently. We see that in hip hop because they love all of the vintage music. All artists go back there and can run a whole clip of old good songs, and you can see they really in touch with 80s, 70s, 80s vibes. So
I wanted to add another idea because during the time after we made our first record, we were producing a lot of groups in the UK. So we had the things that were influencing us, we were bringing them back, and they became a part of the music we were making through that generation. Because we would go to the UK and produce a group, and we dig something they were doing, create something new, fusing together the influence of the UK, and then bringing it back and putting it on a record. So there was a lot of.
Are you guys in New York, by the way?
No, I'm in Connecticut.
I'm
originally from
New York, but
we actually all from the Bronx.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna be there. Actually, should we say that, Mike?
You'll be there.
Yeah.
I'm in Ashford and Simpson's house at a dip, whatever that is.
Sugar Bar.
Sugar Bar.
Yeah.
When are you gonna be there?
27th. I'm 23rd. Sorry.
23rd. March
23rd. Yeah.
March 23rd.
It's a tiny room, but it's so historic. I was like, we gotta play that room, man. The opportunity came up, and so we're gonna be doing it on the 23rd.
Man, I'd love to come out.
What are you guys working on now?
A new System album.
We gotta
finish it.
9.
We just gotta finish it, huh?
We're close. Cooking in the kitchen.
We're close. We're very close.
Is it? I wrote another track, Mike. I just
Let
wrote
me hear
one the last 15 minutes before the show started. You better get ready to write to it.
I'm ready. I'll be out there in a few days. We'll hook up.
That's right. My son is getting married. Mike's coming out. We're playing.
Congratulations!
How about that?
Congratulations! And another thing, and this is the last thing I'll say. I'll let the other guys. I feel like I did a lot of talking, but I also appreciate the camaraderie that you all have. That you have as a group and standing the test of time. And to me, it's just a great balance. Like even the little conversation we're having about like the feel and the theory, and you put that together, and that's just a great combination to make good music. So I tip my cap to you guys. I'm a fan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, man. We appreciate it.
Rob, Ken, you have other questions?
No, I had one more question. Y'all did some work in Soundtrack with Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America, correct?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
What was that? How did you get to get the score on that. I would say, I guess.
Coming to America was actually a Nile Rodgers song, so that involved him.
Yeah, and he wanted us to be the artist, so we went Atlantic, and Atlantic distributed the soundtrack, and we got in there.
Beverly Hills Cop.
Baptized the Beat is for me, it's a hallmark of the system.
Yeah.
It's so unusual. It's weird because the minute David sent me that beat, I knew the lyric. It was a 5-minute write because I knew the lyric. I knew we went to see the cuts of the film, right? Didn't we? At a movie theater, and we knew it was Beat Street. And then there was a scene where they were doing breakdancing, and the guy did this thing where he went down on the ground and he came up like in the cross, or the Jesus cross. So I thought that's where Baptized the Beat came from, because to me, the way they were dancing, they were baptizing the beat.
and I want to say that was actually an attempt at the time to do a walking bass line. If you know, I remember at the time I was thinking it was all about dancing, and I was thinking about like older jazz beats, boom, 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 you know. And I went, we got to do that with hip hop. I'm gonna do something like that with along the lines. And even though I didn't really consider myself to be like really good at that, like I started out with the beat, the drums the way they were, and I went, I'm gonna try to go up, 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 to try to imitate that kind of walking bass line. That's where it came from for me.
You were rocking out on Beat Street though.
I didn't know how to dance to that song. When I got up there on stage, I remember thinking, how am I gonna, hopefully no one's looking at me. I couldn't figure out how to move.
Nobody knew. Nobody knew.
No one still knows. But they still like it somehow. That's all right. Whatever.
Nah, it was as raw as ever. It was perfect fit, man.
Ken, you any last questions?
No, I mean, just listening to you guys' stuff and the uniqueness, and I feel like you guys ushered in a lot of stuff that people were trying to do and stuff, and kind of change the game with it. So, I mean, I just appreciate you guys' music and the way it's influenced the way a lot of things that even then and things that people do now.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate
Y'all are
you
very
saying
nostalgic to me, man. Very nostalgic to me. I've listened to you guys through my teenage years. I remember times playing ball and hearing y'all music in the background, someone playing Good Day Radio.
System.
Right. Perfect summer day and listening to the system going on, man.
Vibes.
I got a funny story. I went to a wedding, my wife's neighbor's wedding from Jersey, and I'm there in the buffet, and this guy walks by me, Latin guy, Spanish guy, and he says something to me. I didn't quite hear what he said, but I didn't expect anyone there to know me or know what I did. And then about a half an hour later, one of my wife's friends brings her daughter over, and she starts telling me that her favorite 2 songs of all time, You're in My System and Don't Disturb This Groove. And she was almost in tears. And she said, you know, there's a DJ, I think she said DJ Quick. I think that's the name she said. That when he plays your record, he calls it a song that makes the sun come out.
Wow.
That's what she said.
Wow.
I had a little moisture in the corner of my eye, man.
Oh, Mick Murphy, David Frank, the system. We appreciate y'all. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for agreeing to even have this conversation.
Thanks for having us here. It was great.
This has been wonderful. Great discussion. You guys are
nice to meet all of you.